You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of truth, a dimension of freedom, a dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Happy Friday, folks. We are the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair, Mr. Michael Liebowitz, who is also helming this amazing channel we call The Rational Alternative. Michael, anything you want to say about The Rational Alternative?
Well, we've got it tomorrow, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. We're going to be doing science in medieval times. It's not medieval, it's medieval times. With Megan Ribbons, that'll be tomorrow. Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 8 Pacific. We got special members only content. And of course, we have this here, you and I knocking it out of the park on a daily basis, giving insight and analysis like nobody else can, with the help of Mr. James Stevens Valiant. And also, don't forget that tomorrow we got Self-Made Soul.
Yes, we do. 8 o'clock in the morning, Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be going over chapter 2 of The Joys of Living. And this chapter is called A Professional at Living. And Michael, I'm going to try to bang out an audio version of the chapter. I'm going to do it in some kind of funky character too, just to have fun with it. And I'm going to put it on my Patreon in case anybody has not yet purchased the book. They can hear me do a read through of it before the evening is out.
I forgot. What? It's more reading I have to do now. So now I've got to read for the medieval science stuff. I got to read now for this. It's so much reading.
It is a lot of reading. Not quite as much reading as you give me every single morning to do, which I have to plow between morning chores, training, feeding chickens, and somehow I managed to get most of it done in the few hours that I have in the morning, Michael. Do you sleep? Because I get these things at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Megan just sending me samples in the mail. Okay. That doesn't make any sense to anybody else, but I just got the text. Yeah, I don't sleep well. No. Last night, I actually did have a decent night's sleep. This magnesium seems to work better than the melatonin.
It's great.
Oh, I'm not going to say great. Let's not push it. You know what I mean? I don't want to push things, but it's
Why?
working
You mean
better.
You don't want to jinx it?
No, it's not. I don't believe in jinxing. I also don't believe in exaggerating. And race, yes, I read your stuff that you sent.
Okay, Race, I have not yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I tried to send a copy of it to our secretary, and it was not going through. So I don't know if it's a technical glitch on my end, but I am definitely looking forward to reading it. I'm going to try to read it tonight before our brainstorm session.
Right. So I read that this morning. I read all the articles that I sent to Mark.
Are you a fast reader?
Good to go. I don't know, but people ask me that. I don't. Compared to who? I don't know. What do you mean fast reader? Somebody else asked me that recently. And I'm like, well, I don't know. What do you hear?
Fast? Do you hear, for example, there's a couple of different ways to read, right? Do you hear every word in your head as you're reading? Or do you read visually where you're capturing like whole sentences and paragraphs without hearing the words?
I took that speed reading. I didn't take the course. I read the book that is the course on doing that, reading in blocks like that.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't like doing that. So I just read. I don't know. I read and that's it. And I try to absorb as much of the information as I can. That's it. So we got a good show. We got stuff we're going to talk about. We're promoting capitalism. I finished watching The Two Towers last night, and I'm happy with that. I'll be right back. Hold on a minute.
And you have to give us a little film review. Yes, Katie, Self-Made Soul will be tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We have to come in at that time because Michael has got, a very busy schedule. He's got a hard out at 9 a.m. Pacific Time because he's doing a show with Megan. So I don't want to interfere with that. It's a damn good show, and I don't want to shift their time around, so their audience has something consistent to rely on. And thanks, Race, for sending a PDF to Ariana. I will try to get to read it tonight so that we have something to talk about with respect to your writing. and creation of policy for the party.
So I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying Lord of the Rings so far.
It's a
but I got to tell you
series.
something. Like if you're, I have to keep Googling shit because one thing I'll say about it, and I like the movie and I think it's great and all that, but I don't think that the whatever it is that does it, the writer, the director, does a good job of explaining things. So like you've got these orcs, then you've got the what are they, the Hurakai or the Murakai. But they're different. You see, you don't even know what the hell I'm talking about.
Are those the big orcs? Those are the big orcs that are like the commanders of whole.
But they're not just big orcs. That's the thing.
But
and
they're
it
big,
turns
ugly
out,
things.
Yeah, but but they're smarter than the orcs. And it turns out that in the book, there's actually Urukai. Yeah, there's actually three things. There's these half orcs mixed with, I think they're called the Goblin people. There's the Urukai and there's the orcs. But in the movie, he's kind of combined the Urukai and the half orcs. They don't go back and tell you how Sauron created things. So it can get confusing. And then, of course, there's Gandor and Rohan. And I don't find that he does a good job of explaining the connections between these things. So I'm very grateful that I have Google that I can go to. But if I was in a movie theater in 2001 and didn't have Google on my phone, I'd be lost.
Well, I read the books, so I wasn't lost, but I don't remember that lineage. So thanks.
What do you mean you read the books? You don't even know what the hell I'm talking about.
Because I read the books like 30 years ago, dude.
Okay.
But, 2001 would have been a lot closer to the time that I read the books. I probably would have remembered those lineages. But Michael, I wasn't bothered by that. And I wish you weren't either. Kathy, yes. By the way, it is.
Wait, whoa! Back up.
What do you mean?
Friday, what do you mean? Yeah.
Hold on.
What do you mean?
We'll deal with that in a second. Let me get this out of the way first. It's Q&A Friday, folks. So be sure to bring your questions and comments, concerns to us, and we will do our best to answer them. So Kathy asked if she could ask a question. Of course you can. It's Q&A Friday. What do I mean, Michael?
No, I just think it's absurd that you're watching something and you're like, oh, it doesn't concern me if I don't know what's going on. That's crazy.
But I did know what was going on. I might not have known that nuance. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen the movies. But I might not have known that nuance, but it didn't fuck up the narrative for me.
No, but they're referring to things. The characters are referring to things. Oh, we must fight for Gondor. Oh, they're trying to take Rohan, his wild men. There's all these different things. And then the thing that I don't like either is, and I love the movie, but you got me steamed now. Is that you've got Sauron, Saruman. Why the similar names? And then in the movie, the people, they all look alike.
What? Well, you mean the elves have all the same color hair, and it's hard.
Well, according to what's it? Gemini. It was Sauron that made the orcs. No, not Sauron that made. Sauron made the half orcs.
I'm glad we solved the problems of the Middle Earth.
No, but that got me annoyed though. That drives me crazy when people say things like that.
Copy that. Now, because I have my contacts in, Michael, you're going to have to read any questions that we have in the chat because.
All right, but it's not the elves that look alike. That's not what I'm talking about. See,
but the elves do look alike.
Conclusions. But that's not my concern.
But they have the same color hair. They look the same.
Look, you got this king of Rohan. You got the king of Rohan. He's got a son that dies. They don't really explain that. Then he's got this nephew that's off in the wild. He was exiled. But then you also have this farmer or Faramir, and his brother was Boromir. They all look the same, and they all, by the way, look like what's his name, Aragorn. And what's supposed to be happening here?
They got the look, man. They got the look, and nobody quite looks like Aragorn, my friend.
Boromir looked like him. Who is he?
Anyway? No.
Yeah.
Viggo Mortensen, his own man. So, are we going to get to the news? We're solving the problems of the Middle Earth without discussing the problems of the actual Earth. And I see questions being asked through the chat, so you might want to check on those before we get to the news. And
okay, yes,
it is Q&A Friday.
Kathy Cassio wants to, and you forgot to tell him about the super chats and super stickers. Maybe if I wasn't so broke, I wouldn't be so irritable. But anyway, she wants to know how's Cody, and can we get some Cody merchandise?
Yeah, I could make some Cody merchandise. He's definitely merchandisable. He's doing okay. He's eating like a pig, but still sort of skinny. His blood test turned out very good. So internally, things seem to be working fine. He does not have a very good relationship with Ziggy. Ziggy is terrified of him, and it's very cute watching Ziggy try to connect with Cody, and Cody just ain't having it. Cats are usually the alphas. I don't know if you knew that, Michael, but if there's a household of pets, there's a lot of dogs, there's a cat. The cat is usually the alpha, and Cody definitely establishes his alpha status with Ziggy, and Ziggy's very funny and very dramatic. So I hope Cody's okay. He's 14 years old. He's getting up there. So I'm going to have to start, bringing him everywhere with me the way I brought Frankie with me, because I certainly don't want him to go when there's a babysitter here watching him while I'm off working. Thanks, Jerry, for the super sticker, $5 super sticker. Thank you so much. Michael really appreciates that. I know there was another question up there.
I'm going to get to that. Rock Chartrand wants to know, is Rubio the lesser evil to vote President DeSantis, Vivek? I don't know, Rock, because I've stopped playing that game of trying to figure out who the lesser evil is. You keep voting for the lesser evil, and it keeps getting more and more evil. And I just don't. I don't want to do that kind of calculation. Part of the problem is they're all liars. So it's difficult to say when somebody's not telling you the truth if they're going to be the lesser evil than another guy who's not telling you the truth.
That's true. What have you noticed in Vivek that is dishonest?
Oh my God, he just seems to me like a used car salesman. I'm going to be perfectly honest.
He does have that vibe. He's very articulate, and he's one of the more consistent spokespeople for a capitalistic society than any of the above.
So one of the things I didn't like is that he supported the bombing of Mexico to fight the war on drugs. I didn't like that. I also didn't like how conveniently he changed his mind on the events of January 6th. Just, in time to ingratiate himself to the Trump people, wouldn't criticize Trump during the Republican debates, that sort of thing.
But do you think I think some of it, of course, was political opportunism and looking for a place in the Trump administration. Do you think any of it had to do with the old Republican notion that you don't beat up on other Republicans? Because he refused to do that with respect to other Republicans in the debate as well.
So I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I just found it very convenient. And also, he was part of the whole, what was it, that fiasco where they were going to cut all kinds of money. What was it called? I can't remember. Doge, yeah. Department of Government Efficiency. Yeah. But really, he reminds me of this guy in prison, this guy Cervello, who was just a pure scam artist. Like, this guy would come over, like, he'd be selling things, and he would say things to you like, I don't want to sell it for $5, but for you, I'll do it. Just for you.
That's so smarmy.
Vivek reminded me so much of him. Now, obviously, that's not an objective reason to dislike the guy. I'm just saying he gives me that vibe. And then when you have the changing of the opinion thing, when you have the wanting to bomb Mexico thing, just not a big fan. I think it's but I do start with the assumption normally that they are lying.
I think that's a good assumption to start with. But I do think I like you, Michael, have abandoned the lesser evil, because you take away lesser, it's still evil, and you don't want to be playing around in the evil camp. You want to get the better candidate, which means that's really on the side of good. Vivek, with the exception of those policies, and perhaps he was trying to appeal to the social conservatives who really think the drug war is not a disaster. Maybe that was the case, but he's been the soundest person on capitalism of any Republican I've ever heard up to this point. Somebody can contradict me if they want to, tell me if I'm wrong, and maybe I have a little soft spot for him because I did this program called Woke capitalism. My friend Peter Boghossian put it together. I was one of the people speaking in favor of capitalism. Vivek was also speaking in favor of capitalism, and he was very articulate.
He's articulate. Rock now throws in Nikki Haley. Same
No.
applies.
No.
Same applies. Same applies. First of all, she's too much of a hawk for me. You know, like she just seems to be one of these people that never found a war she doesn't like. Plus, there was the whole thing with Trump early on. She criticized him, didn't like him, then went to work in his cabinet. No.
And she's a statist. I mean, I don't see her being a good capitalist. For me, Vivek is closer to that than anybody there. Michael, should we talk about Saudi Arabia, the nuclear deals, and Trump's additional conditions?
So you actually met Vivek?
I didn't meet Vivek, but we were in the same video together, so I got a chance to preview some of his arguments, which I thought were very sound. I mean, I don't hear his language coming out of anyone in the Republican Party, especially after Trump has completely morphed it into the Christian nationalist, mercantilist monster that it is today.
I got a manicure and a pedicure yesterday, by the way.
Did you do it with your girl?
I don't know what that has to do with
like a date.
I don't know what that has to do with my manicure and pedicure. What I do with my girl is not subject to discussion on the show.
I know, but
you're pervert and you're kind of sick. Okay, look.
Well, I went in. I'm an actor.
I went out with my friend and we went to eat.
The boys did it. The boys went out for.
No, he didn't. But this is what occurred. So we went out to eat together. Then we got coffee, and he had sandals on, and I was making fun of his feet. And I told him he had Fred Flintstone feet, and I was going on.
Like all of his toes are in a line. Like all.
I don't know, but then I realized that my toes are pretty banged up, and there's a place right around the corner. Just in the same plaza that Diana does go to. They do pedicures, they do manicures. I went in, I looked around. And then I almost got the Costanza treatment. Well, at least I thought I was getting the Costanza treatment. So there's like 6 women in there and 1 dude. So I wait in 15 minutes or so, and the guy says, "Okay, ready for you. Come over." And I'm like, "Oh man, I don't want this guy touching my feet and massaging me," and But he tells me to sit down, and he says she'll be over in a minute. And it was the prettiest one there. And she and I had a lot of discussions with her, politics, morality, that sort of thing. Yeah, it was a really it was a nice experience. They did very nice. I wish I could remember the name of the place, but nonetheless, I got it done, and I feel good. Okay. Now that I'm done talking about this, we can go to Rock has a question. Why do Americans pretend Saudi isn't an enemy? Yes, that's why. And we're actually going to get into that in a moment. Un momento. I was able to get the mani-pedi, Megan, because I got my tax refund.
So you splurged.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about Saudi Arabia now that Rock has brought it up. So, do you want to? Is that good? Because you look strange right now.
I do want to. Yeah,
okay,
I put it
good. Yeah, so there was a deal on the table where Trump was offering Saudi Arabia the nuclear option, where they could start a nuclear program, provided it was for civilian use, and a potential enrichment cycle, of course, down the line. Now, it was not dissimilar to programs that I think that have been offered to the UAE already. Scary, but I think, did they sign it, Michael? And then Trump wanted this additional condition added to it. Is that what happened? So they signed this agreement. Then he said, but it's really contingent upon you joining the Abraham Accords.
Okay, so it's a little different than the UAE agreement in that UAE is not allowed to enrich. But the Saudis are. And also there's this thing about, I think, snap inspections. If I'm wrong about being snap inspections, I apologize. But it is a little bit different in terms of enforcement, and of course in terms of what is allowed and what's not allowed. So yeah, the early reports were that there was an agreement that would ultimately allow Saudis to enrich, but only for peaceful purposes, not for weapons grade stuff, which I'm skeptical that they would limit it to that anyways. But afterwards, there was a lot of criticisms. There were a lot of criticisms of Trump I guess that, the Israelis wouldn't like this, and there were criticisms about why are you going to allow them to enrich. So now after the deal is kind of done, but it hasn't got to Trump's final approval, I guess, he says, well, actually, there's going to be no enrichment. And he says it's contingent on them signing the Abraham Accords. Okay. First of all, we talked about it yesterday. Bad idea for the reasons that Rock just mentioned. Saudis, this government, they're not good people. This whole enemy of my enemy is my friend, and Ian Gilmore points out the oil situation, that's part of it too. But the thing that I really dislike about it, Mark, honestly, it's this idea that countries cannot trust the United States. Right? We entered into negotiations with Iran. Now, I'm not an Iranian fan, but then we bombed them during negotiations. Right? They go and they negotiate with Iran, and Trump claims that there's all these wonderful things, this memorandum of understanding. As the leaks come out, what it's about, the administration keeps denying what's in it. But then it comes out, and it turns out what people were saying was in it was actually in it. So when Trump says things like no enrichment, and he says it's contingent on them entering the Abraham Accords with Israel, first of all, I'm skeptical that that was his intent from the beginning. But also other countries are going to doubt us. And you don't do diplomacy that way. It's not a good idea. But for more to the point, so if the Saudis say, yes, we're going to be, cooperate with Israel, we'll join these Abraham Accords, what does that mean? I don't know. Like, I could agree to all kinds of things. If I have in my life, when I was a scumbag, I told everybody what they wanted to hear. I didn't care. Yeah, sure, I'm going to be back with your drugs. Give me the money. You know what I mean? Like, there were plenty of agreements. Who cares?
Yeah, indeed, Michael. I sort of like that he was making a contingent upon them entering the Abraham Accords. But of course, Saudi Arabia, true to form, has said no, not unless Israel agrees to some kind of format for a Palestinian state. But Michael, that Palestinian state was offered to the Arab population in 1947, and they rejected it. It's been offered to them multiple times. In 2005, it was offered to them.
99, right? Or 2000?
99, 2005, when they cleared out Gaza of 8,000 settlers, Jewish settlers. They cleared the Jews out of that land completely. The IDF did it. And still, the Gazans were not happy because their ideology is not about a state living in relative peace side by side with an Israeli state. It's about taking over the entire region. So that will never happen. So, of course, now we're at an impasse. Yeah.
So you'd be okay. I understand that you like the idea of the Abraham Accords, but you'd be okay with Trump basically blindsiding a negotiating partner, makes a deal with them. That to me is the problem.
Well, that's what he does. I mean, at this point, if you think that any deal with him is final, you're moronic, because he always throws something into the mix whenever the whim takes him. That's going like he's doing with tariffs, as we're going to discuss at some point during this conversation. Blindsided 60 countries, and they're allies. They're trade allies, my friend. He's actually potentially turning the entire Pacific Rim against the United States, which could be our potential allies against China. So to shackle them with tariffs like he's doing now in order to, I don't know, save face or keep his mercantilist ideals alive, he's just screwing over allies again and creating a situation where nobody can trust what this guy says or does. He's throwing everybody under the bus. He threw Netanyahu under the bus. He'll throw you under the bus if it serves his purpose. So you have to know this guy has no governing principles at all except his own aggrandizement. That's it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I didn't expect you to segue so quickly to the tariffs.
I know, but it sort of worked though, because he's a backstabbing cunt. I'm sorry to say, sorry to use that language, guys, but he is. So anyway, so I'm sure this Saudi deal is going to be stalled because the Abraham Accords are not going to be. It's not going to be copacetic for the Saudi folks, unless there's this unreasonable position tacked on that Israel has to grant some kind of forward motion to a Palestinian state, which can't happen at this point. It simply can't happen. And it's the Palestinians' fault for that. Anyway, so here we are, Michael, in this strange territory where Trump is preparing to arm, and I guess the UAE got their agreements under Biden, didn't they? Did they get some of the nuclear agreements under Biden?
I think so. I think you're onto something there.
So both of them are setting the Middle East onto a nuclear armed path, which is highly disturbing since the UAE and Qatar and Saudi Arabia are the next to Iran, the biggest sponsors of Islamic terror in the world. I'm a little bit skeptical about them having an atomic weapon. Forgive me. I'm skeptical of Pakistan having an atomic weapon. If anything, Michael, is because the atomic weapon enables their regimes to remain entrenched, because you're not gonna fuck with them. It was exactly the plan of North Korea, right? North Korea did exactly what the Iranians have been trying to do by stringing along American negotiations long enough so that they could get a nuclear weapon, test nuclear weapons, and then finally miniaturize them and put them on ballistic missiles. That there was a whole decades-long process where they were stringing along American negotiations until they finally procured a weapon. And now one of the reasons Kim Jong-il is entrenched in power, because nobody's going to fuck with
It's Un.
Kim Jong-un is entrenched in power, is because nobody's going to mess with the nuclear power. Nobody's going to mess with him because he can pop a ballistic missile over to Japan or to South Korea and take them out with a single punch. So it's scary, Michael. It's scary that we think that negotiating with these folks is actually going to solve a problem. It won't. In the same way that you saying, I'll be back with your drugs, you're not going to be back with your drugs. You don't make a deal with somebody like that.
No, sir, you do not. All right, so now you've done a good job.
Yes,
that was great.
And Akira Felix is right. They have a long history of helping Islamicist fundamentalists. Let's not forget, that's where Osama bin Laden was harbored for years before he was taken out by our Navy SEAL Team 6. Go ahead, Michael. What did you want to say?
I'm having computer problems is all.
Title of my biography.
You've got a lot of titles of your biography, dude.
I do. They're all experimental. All right, so I'll bring up tariffs, Michael, since I already started down that route. So I guess the stopgap tariffs that Trump put in place after the Supreme Court rightfully shot down his power to unilaterally determine economic policy in the world. I guess they're expiring today, right? It's to Friday today. And so there's in their place, he's decided to take out a section of an international trade agreement from the 70s, like Section 301, that enables him to place tariffs on countries that are not adequately policing forced labor issues. And so he's now placed a 10 to 12.5% tariff on 60 countries, Michael. And some of these countries include Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, places that are our allies and potential military and economic allies in the face of Chinese hegemony. And also, Michael, relatively free countries.
Yeah, it's... Well, whatever. You already know what an insane person he is. Somebody's calling me here. I got to turn that off. State of Connecticut. I wonder what they want. Okay, so yeah, let me just tell you. They've got... let me open this up. So the international... I was very interested this morning about... For instance, what are they talking about with forced labor? What exactly do they mean? What countries actually practice it? So according to international law, forced labor, it defines forced labor as all work or service exacted from any person under the threat of penalty and for which the person has not offered himself or herself voluntarily.
Wait a minute. Doesn't that cover taxation?
Ooh, that's
Well, they say they exempt compulsory military service and civic duty, which I'm
Okay.
assuming means taxation.
Okay. So now you got me all confused. Okay. There's three legal elements: the work service itself, a threatened penalty, and lack of genuine voluntary consent. Here's what you refer to now. Narrow exceptions exist for things like military service, normal civic obligations, and lawful prison labor. The Complementary Abolition of Forced Labor Convention separately bars states from using forced labor for political coercion, economic development, discrimination, labor discipline, or punishing strikes. And then you have the U.S. law, where I have that here also. The main federal criminal statute criminalizes knowingly obtaining someone's labor through force, threats of force, physical restraint, serious harm, or threats of serious harm, abuse of legal process, or a scheme intended to make the victim believe refusal would bring serious consequences. Okay.
Sounds a lot like our present tax system, and James Valiant says you could drive a truck through those exceptions. Anyway, go ahead.
This is true. This is true. But here's another problem. Virtually every country on the planet does this. Right? Because I wanted to know what countries actually have forced labor going on within their borders. And it said, well, all of them. No country specifically allows it. Some of the worst offenders are the aforementioned Saudi Arabia, one of our allies.
Absolutely.
Kuwait, another ally.
Yep.
Russia, not an ally, but, Trump does seem to love this guy. Also, it's incredibly difficult to know whether a given product has had forced labor used in its production. Can you pay attention here, please? You're
I'm
blowing
sorry.
kisses. You're freaking me out.
It's Ziggy. He's looking adorable over there. And
Well, you don't have to blow kisses. It's getting weird here on the Capitalist Corner Friday edition. Never mind. So it's incredibly difficult to know this. Okay. Now let's consider some things. Trump's initial tariffs were found unconstitutional. So they implemented these temporary tariffs that are still being adjudicated, but they only last, I want to say 120 days. Maybe it's 150
days.
Right. Okay. So it's readily apparent that this isn't really being enacted out of concern for forced labor. What they did was they went law shopping. What on the books is going to allow us to do this? And as Scott Lincecum points out in a great piece in the Dispatch today, there's no way that they can get off this list. It's not as if we're saying you're using forced labor, or you're allowing forced labor, and once you stop, we'll remove the tariff. And by the way, all the countries that are being tariffed, whether they are relatively free countries or tyrannical countries, all getting the same tariff. And from what Scott Lincecum said, the tariffs are being imposed far in excess to any economic loss that's occurring, because that's part of the thing there where they say, it's unfair to American companies that they're competing with this forced labor. Gary Menard, I'm not sure that can be a trademark thing, because I'm sure I didn't come up with it. It's like doctor shopping. I assume everyone knows what doctor shopping is. Oh, listen. Kathy says Mark blowing kisses to Ziggy is adorable. Well, maybe so, but it's still a little distracting and a little weird. Let's be honest. I mean, we can be honest with each other here.
So, Michael, did you talk about also the complexity of supply chains that makes it utterly impossible for them to really determine where along the supply chains this forced labor is occurring, right? There's various tiers of a supply chain. It mostly occurs in the procurement stages of raw materials, but still, it's almost everything is involved in it, and these supply chains are spread across vast numbers of countries, and it's super, super hard to get to the bottom of where along the supply chain this forced labor is occurring. So it's a super specious metric to use as a standard for tariffing these countries.
Now, look, if for certain, right? Like if you're buying cotton in the 1830s, from the South. You know that slave labor picked this cotton. There's a strong argument for banning that. But when it's so, but there's all these exceptions carved out, like Jim Valiant said. It's so difficult to detect, and it's going to be used as an arbitrary power in the way Trump's using it. It's bad news.
It's very bad news. And Michael, there was a question up there. I want to know if you know the reference at all, because I think it was a super
Yes,
chat.
let's back up. Okay, let me back up to that. Yes. It's from Ann M, and Ann wants to know about thoughts on Shiloh Hendrix conviction for a word. I don't know what that is, but Mark is going to do a quick advertisement for the channel here, and I'm going to find it.
Well, I have it sort of up on my AI, so I can actually talk about it. But you are listening to the Capitalist Corner. If you're catching us on X, we are the Capitalist Corner. We are the flagship show of the Rational Alternative. So please make sure to tune in for the various shows here, where you will get, I think, the most rational take on news events of the day, on ethics, on public education. You name it, we talk about it from a rational perspective. Now, Michael, I'll read it straight from here. So apparently a video was recorded by a bystander that showed her confronting an 8-year-old black autistic boy who had taken an applesauce pouch from her diaper bag. She repeatedly used a racial slur towards the child. That's terrible. And when Omar confronted, he was the man taping this, confronted her and began filming, she directed the same slur at him multiple times, told him to mind his own business, made other remarks, including about welfare, and made gestures such as flipping him off. The roughly 49-second video went viral. 49 seconds, it ruins your life, Michael. Here's the aftermath. Hendrix identified herself, defended her actions in some public statements, and launched a Give, Send, Go crowdfunding campaign, citing doxing, threats, and the need to relocate. It raised a large sum. Reports range from $700,000 to $900,000. Many donations and comments came from people expressing white, nationalist, racist, or free speech views. I hate that they're all put into the same context now, Michael. White, national, racist,
free speech. Yeah, free speech rules. Yeah.
The platform muted the comments. It goes on, but so the boy's family. It says here, sought privacy, a separate fundraiser for them via the local NAACP, and raised over almost $340,000, and later placed it in trust, I'm supposing for the boy. Public reaction was highly polarized, with condemnation from local officials, the NAACP, and others, alongside support for some conservative and right-wing commentators, framing it as resistance to cancel culture. Come on. Come on. Resistance to cancel culture. Come on.
That's dumb. The kid, it's a little autistic kid, and she's calling the kid racial slurs, right? I would say the word myself, but I'm afraid YouTube will cancel us if we do. But Ann wants to know if it's a free speech issue. I don't know, Ann. I don't know enough about the case, even from what Mark just said. I also don't know what the law in that state is as pertains to this. It's already a little strange to me because they said that it was not a unanimous verdict.
Well, here's Michael. Let me get to the legal outcome here, because it says she was charged with misdemeanor disorderly conduct counts after a 4-day trial in July. It says not guilty on the count related to the interaction with the child, guilty on the count related to the interaction with the
okay, yeah, that's what they meant by split. Okay, I'm sorry, I was confused. I'm just $1,000 fine,
states suspended 90-day jail sentence, 200 hours of community service and supervised probation. Her attorney indicated plans to appeal and was critical of the proceedings, the judge and the prosecutors, all which may be true, but we don't know.
Mark, does it say that the kid stole from her? Because what I just saw, it said she accused him of stealing. But Ann,
it didn't say. It just said he took. She attacked him verbally because he took an applesauce container from her diaper bag.
Oh, okay. So he did take it.
Yes.
Okay, so Ian Gilmore says he's 8 years old. Who cares if he's autistic? Well, I suppose, Ian, someone could say he's autistic. Who cares how old he is? The point is that both being 8 and being autistic limit the kid's ability.
His culpability, yeah.
To make decisions. So I think it warrants mentioning both. Though I think the woman's clearly a jerk.
Unhinged. An unhinged racist, absolutely right.
Whether that should be a crime under normal circumstances, I would say no. But I am, and I haven't really done a lot of thinking, and so I'm kind of, freestyling here. And come on, that's the type of thing that no.
She got emotional when he stole her baby. Look, I mean, Michael, she wasn't prosecuted for her speech. She was prosecuted for harassing people in disorderly conduct, which, quite frankly, she was.
But come on. Yeah, listen, she's not being, it's not just getting emotional because someone stole your baby's food when you're going to an 8-year-old child and saying that to him. Come on.
And calling him the N-word, and then calling the filmographer the N-word.
Right. I mean, no.
By a racial slur, look, and implying they're on welfare, throwing. I mean, she's reprehensible. She's clearly a reprehensible human being.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, again, whether this should be a crime,
but that wasn't the crime. The crime was disorderly conduct.
Well, that's the problem is, and this is something, like I said, I haven't gone in depth thinking about, but if you were out in public, do people have the right to come up to you and start shouting obscenities at you? Right?
No.
And it's like, I've seen these videos where this guy's walking, he's a Jewish guy, and these Nazis they're videotaping him and they're calling him Jew, you Jew, and they're allowed to get away with it. And it looks horrible to me. Now, the free speech side of me says I'm very skeptical about arresting people for stuff like that. Right. But I also think that if it's in public, I don't know. I don't know where I stand.
So,
I haven't.
Yeah, but Michael, is it disorderly conduct? Perhaps. And the point here was that it was subjected to a jury of her peers, and the jury split on the issue. Whether you agree with it, she still has the power of appeal, which she's going through now.
Well, yeah,
I think the people who are victims of this have a right to press charges, and and then the law determines whether or not those charges are good, buddy. So.
Yeah, clearly, it wasn't just for using the word. And disorderly conduct is a crime, as Ian points out. Now, should we get rid of disorderly conduct crimes?
No.
I think, no, of course. And here's the problem, man. And I'm trying to come to an honest opinion on the issue. You're looking for a reason to absolve her. Right? I'm not. I'm looking to get to the truth, because now you've gone from should she be arrested for a word to it's a free speech issue to it's she's being, she just was emotional. Now it's, but should it be selectively enforced? There's a lot of different things there. I got news for you, Ann, and for anybody else. Most laws are selectively enforced. Do cops pull over everybody that's speeding? No.
This is true, Michael. And look, Akira says, well, following a man around is harassment, and that's no longer free speech. Look, she wasn't brought to court for a word, even though the word was offensive, and I'm sure it added some vim and vigor to the people who wanted to prosecute her, because she was harassing them.
Right.
She was harassing them, and she was harassing an 8-year-old child, for crying out loud, who's also autistic, who has diminished capacity to understand the consequences of their behavior. You have a right to be mad, Michael. You have a right to say things, but you also must pay the consequences for those.
Well, but part of the problem here is that I'm not seeing it, and I'm not hearing testimony. I've heard you reading me something very quickly. I don't know how long this lasted. I don't know what her body language was. You know what I mean? There's so much that I don't know that I really can't come to a conclusion here. You know what I mean? But trying to say, well, she's just emotional because they stole from her child, or yeah, but it's being selectively enforced. That's no.
Certainly doesn't fly. I mean, I'm drawing more conclusions than you are, Michael. Yours is probably the wiser position to take, since we really don't know any facts other than the little synopsis I got. But my gut reaction, based on what I know and based on my sense of the way society works, is she wasn't prosecuted for a word. She was prosecuted for indecent behavior and for harassing people,
Right.
which is basically what the charges were. Anyway, and I'm for those. I'm for that, Michael. Those kinds of laws, that maintain
Sure.
a certain kind of social civility.
It
To a
just
degree.
depends to me. It depends to me on the extent of the harassment. There's just a lot of factors that I don't know. I certainly don't think that people should be free in public to go and scream at anybody that they want for whatever reason, yelling and making a scene. But I don't know the extent to which this woman was doing that.
Right. There's a comment there from Ian Gilmore. Can you read? Does it matter? Do we need to read it? It's
He and Akira are having a discussion.
Okay, it's fascinating to see how conservatives now just reject court verdicts. Well, yeah, now we see how it's their tribal affiliations that matter most, Michael. I mean, it's and how their tribal affiliation enables them to justify all kinds of shit behavior, and then to turn their backs on what they were supposed to stand for all of conservatism's
Right. I mean, that's
history,
true.
which is law
Mark,
and order and civility.
um, it would be a much different and a better world if most property was privatized or all property was privatized. Then a lot of these types of issues get solved.
Yeah.
Because if you're on somebody's private property and they have the rules of engagement or rules of conduct, and you're violating those rules, they can throw you out. And if you refuse, they could press charges.
Absolutely.
When you have public property that everybody has, access to, that's it becomes a difficult thing. And that's where the place of, disturbing the peace and disorderly conduct, public indecency, things of that nature, come into play.
Yeah, we certainly have issues, defining our terms when everybody owns the property in essence.
Right. Ian makes a great point here about conservatives in the law, because I got to tell you, for decades in prison, I listened to black guys complain about a racist system that was unjust and put them in prison. And I used to argue with them, no, actually, you're guilty. And conservatives used to say, I don't care. You have to be responsible for your behavior. Don't blame the police. Don't blame this one. And even now, when there's a shooting, you'll often hear them say, just obey and you don't have to worry about getting shot. But yet when it's their billionaire grifter hero who goes to court, now, all of a sudden, the FBI is corrupt. The judges are corrupt. It's the whole system. It's really unfair. It's so unfair. It's not unfair to, the black kid who gets misidentified as being somewhere when he wasn't, right? Who ends up serving time. No. That's no. But Donald Trump loses a civil case for sexual misconduct toward this woman. And it's all, come on, look how unfair this whole thing is. The double standard is a bit much, Ian. I agree.
And James notes something really true here. Worst case of selective enforcement, drugs. Yep.
Of course.
We can go. We could say that about most vice.
Did I ever tell you what they did to me when they raided my house? Should I even say this on TV? Yeah, fuck it. So they raided my house. They handcuffed me out on my steps. Now, they let me secure my dog because they showed up with a shotgun, and I thought they were going to kill the dog, but they let me secure my dog.
Because they will. They will do that.
Well, they would have had to, because I had a pit bull, and, you can't just be rummaging the house. But anyway, so I know what I had, right? So in a bag in my attic, I had 150 bags, dime bags, $10 bags of crack cocaine. I know what I had. They were all in the same bag, right? Separate little bags in a bigger bag, 150 of them. There's no doubt. Like you couldn't find some and not find the others. So when the arrest warrant came through for what they found, it said they found 19 bags. No, obviously I'm not going to come forward. I was 21 at the time. I'm not going to come forward and say, hey, where's the other 131 bags, right? Because it left me with a better, situation, 19 as opposed to 150. But come on, someone took them.
What? So what do you think happened, Michael?
What I think is one of the raiding officers, and there was a lot of them, so there's no telling which one, took them and then likely used them to bribe when you want a drug addict is getting busted or whatever, and you want the addict to flip. Maybe you give them something, you know what I mean? Maybe you give them something on the street, whatever. I ultimately don't know.
Around and sell it on their own.
No, I don't think that. I mean, I don't know ultimately. I just know that there were 131 unaccounted for bags. So
that's hilarious.
So talk about selective prosecution. I don't know. I digressed a little bit.
It's good. The digression was good, Michael. So now that we're on to crimes, let's talk about the dropping crime rate.
Yes,
because if you listen to the news, man, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. People are getting murdered.
That's true. But that's always the case.
I guess it's true, but more so now because there's so many media outlets, and if it bleeds, it leads. So now we don't have just 3 networks doing that. We have hundreds upon hundreds of information outlets.
Can I put something out in their defense? 2 things in their defense. One is when they try to cover good things, they've been networks or shows that try to do that and they get nothing.
And they tank. Yeah.
Yeah. People don't watch. But the other thing is, what are they going to come out and say? Well, there was another day of relatively low crime out there. You know what I mean? You're reporting what occurs, but you don't report what doesn't occur. That said, crime rates are now, dropping to historic lows: murder, rape, robberies, and they were already dropping. They hit highs during COVID and then have come back down, started declining under Biden, have hit historic lows under Trump. They started to decline after the 90s, and everybody wants to take credit, politicians for the laws that they passed, the laws they didn't pass, whatever, policing, everything. But the truth is, and Jacob Sullivan pointed this out in the article, nobody knows. They have no clue why this is happening. Right. They did make an interesting point, though, in the article that I found fascinating, because I've thought about it myself when walking around in New York, because as a kid, I heard a lot about the pickpockets in New York. And I think to myself as I'm walking around, what do these pickpockets do now? Because nobody has cash. Right. Nobody's carrying cash. What are you going to do? You're going to steal my phone? It's useless to you. Right. You're going to steal my wallet and do what with it? Right? You would sell my wallet. And I was wondering that, but the guy made that point in the article that maybe, that's part of it, that you have less crimes related to that sort of conduct. And I was thinking I remember when I was a kid, you had the Bloods and the Crips. There was all these gang wars going on. Mm-hmm. That seems to have subsided a bit. I don't know, but there's been a lot of factors go into this before we start giving praise or blame to a given politician. And by the way, it's the same thing when it comes to the economy of giving any given president so much credit for the state of the economy or so much blame for the state of the economy. But part of the problem is, of course, they run to take credit and run away from taking blame. And, that mucks things up.
It's what malignant narcissists do. One of the things they didn't say was a potential contributor to this lowering crime rate, Michael, and I want to get your opinion on this. Low testosterone levels in men.
Oh, my God.
What do you think? What do you think?
I doubt it.
So you're getting more soy boys out there who are less inclined to, be overtly aggressive out there in the world, and perhaps that's leveling out the violent crime stats. Just a thought. Because I'm positing it out there. I have no scientific proof of it, but I'm wondering if it's a
You know what
contributing
leads to
factor.
crime? Skewed values.
Indeed.
A bad value system. It's not
Indeed.
too much testosterone.
Indeed, but don't you think that testosterone, you have the skewed values and you have the added incentive through the testosterone levels to act on those skewed values.
Where do you do you
whereas if
like
you
sit
higher,
around? What do you
whereas,
do?
whereas if you have a higher estrogen count and soy titties, you're not so inclined to act on
Listen,
those bad values. You'll just be playing video games.
listen. Here's the problem. I think you sit around watching like weirdo doctors, fringe doctors to get their medical opinions. Be careful with that stuff. There was the other guy you recommended. I can't be true.
Dr. Gundry. Dr. Gundry.
Yeah. This guy turns out he's a quack. Just
what?
Yeah. Akira Felix, I promise you, if Mark wants to debate me on testosterone drops being the cause of the drop in crime, Mark will lose that badly. Badly.
Well, there is no evidence for it, Akira. So I'm just spitballing at the moment. But
I mean, historically, Asians and Jews have low crime rates. Are there low testosterone rates?
Well,
there?
there we know that it's a cultural phenomenon with respect to the values that they hold with respect to family, study, responsibility. But I'm assuming if they had monstrous testosterone values, Michael, it would be a much, much harder slog for them. I'm just
you're an actor.
I'm just spitballing, baby. Look, we're coming up. We're almost at the end of our time here. So, do you want to see if anybody answered the question that we posed yesterday?
That's what we're up to 938 subscribers, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. What was the question?
Oh, see, look, Asians and soy. Akira is connecting the dots. He's connecting the dots.
He says they don't even use soy.
What?
He says they don't even use soy.
They don't.
What's
even
that?
Use, really?
So are you saying they
soy
have
sauce? Soy sauce, tofu. What? Come on.
Matt Radley, samurais eat tofu. I don't know. I think you asked about DEI in movies. Greg Doherty says he watches the trailer, starts the movie if interested, and he doesn't finish it if he's bored. Akira Felix says it depends. I only have a problem with it when the actress wants to lecture the audience about politics. Robert Naser says hell no, life's too short. Thomas Hag says it depends how far the wokey stuff goes. And Lee says, I'm literally just a girl, so I'm answering this about the live action Disney princess movies. I didn't care when Ariel was black in The Little Mermaid because she's a mermaid and it doesn't matter. And I thought the actress was amazing. All right. You got to now do the thought and.
I did the question yesterday. So you do the question. I do the thought. Capitalist thought of the day.
You should do more, but go ahead. I'll ask the question.
What? This is new. Yes, folks. Well, capitalism is a system of liberalism, folks. And what is liberalism but freedom, social freedom to live the life that you choose and to pursue the values that you choose. Collectivist communities organized along the collectivist ethics will sacrifice your values for the sake of the whole. That's their moral orientation. But a capitalist society says each and every individual in society is inviolable. They are an end unto themselves and can never be sacrificed for any goal, social goals. This is the kind of world we want, folks, where no individual is sacrificed to anybody else. We don't want a moral cannibalism anymore in society. We want you to be able to live and be free, to associate with whom you choose, to do business with whom you choose, to create how you choose, and to use your property as you see fit. That's what a capitalist society does. That's what I think leads to a benevolent society. And that's what we are striving for here at the Capitalist Corner and in the American Capitalist Party. Go ahead, Michael. I have to save my dog.
Okay.
My wife's dog.
My question for the audience is this. Should Mark Pellegrino and I make some sort of a wager wherein one of us has to shave our mustache? That's what I want. That's the question. Please go to YouTube and answer the question. Should Mark and I make a wager wherein the loser has to shave the mustache?
Here's the problem, though, man. I'm doing a film right now. I have to
Boy,
keep
here
this.
we go with the excuses. Like they don't have fake mustaches.
This film is too low budget. No, it doesn't. They don't have fake mustaches. They would have.
How long we'll qualify it. We'll shave the mustaches when Mark is not making a movie that
There you go.
requires the mustache.
Yeah, fine. I'll go commando on the face. So all right, guys, you have the whole weekend to check your premises, unless you're listening to Capitalist Corner Weekend, which you will be doing with Michael and Megan. They will be bringing you a great show on the weekend.
It's Rational Alternative Weekend, by the way.
Rational Alternative Weekend. There's also Self-Made Soul, 8 a.m. tomorrow Pacific time. Come join us there for a reading of Chapter 2 of A Professional at Living, or at least a discussion. Depends on how much time we have. And until that time, guys, you got a few hours now, a couple of days to check your premises. So do that. Check your premises, man.